welcome to the StephUp podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Ann Webb. And today on the podcast, I have doctor and pastor and my friend, Jon Korkidakis. Hi, Pastor Jon.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Good.
Great
How
to
are
be here
you?
on. Yeah, great to be here with you.
I guess I can just call you Jon. I still call you Pastor Jon.
Oh, yeah, you can call me. We've
I
been friends.
know. I'm so
Yeah,
used to that, though. It's fun.
it's okay.
But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're very busy, but I had this idea because to talk about being fully heard and listening. And your name popped into my head because you were there for me at a time that was so important. And what you did for me was just listen. You did not talk at me. You did not tell me I was being bad or wrong, which is what I used to get. And especially as I look back, I just think, wow, that was so powerful. And I don't know, I mean, I've told you this, but I don't know if you knew how impactful that was for me.
Yeah, you've expressed it in different ways a few times, and that's been really meaningful for me. You need to know, well, it's not a one-way relationship. It's been meaningful for me because it's been a journey for me as well. I may be a pastor and 30 years under the proverbial belt, but I've not been immune to the dark side of the Christian faith, to be honest. Um, I think it's fair to say that the most hurt I've ever experienced has come from believers, and it's come from people who claim to be on the same side, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if I think that's contributed, and certainly getting a bit older has contributed to um, a sense of not just closing the door on people, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I remember hearing a pastor, it was actually Charles Stanley, way back, and he was saying, be so, I guess, healed. I don't know what the right term was that he used, but that you can listen to somebody and not react. And
Yeah.
I'm still working on this. Like I was, you and I were just talking, and I was making faces because I still get these emotional reactions come up when stuff comes up. Uh, but that's part of the process of growing and healing to be able to just like, yeah, listen and for people to be themselves with you. And that's not easy, especially in a world of when we can be so judgmental
Yeah, I think it's
and triggered.
oh, and triggered. Yeah. I remember. Oh, I was at a conference in Atlanta a number of years ago, and I remember one of the speakers, and his name escapes me right now, but he's in Washington and has done prayer books. And I remember him saying, it's easy to act like a Christian, but it's harder to react like one. And I remember that sticking with me, right? It's like, and that became kind of like a journey of self-awareness about how am I reacting to what I hear.
Mm.
And I didn't grow up in the church. I came to ministry kicking and screaming. I did not want to go into ministry. And I remember, thinking that I didn't want to be caught up in this thing that was that a lot of people were perceiving as very judgmental, right? That really bothered me. And anyway, it's funny because I've been thinking a lot this weekend and this past week about this whole topic, and I've come to realize that I have so many life experiences that have brought me to this point that I get triggered by certain people's experiences, and I think of the passage in Luke about, looking for the one lost sheep when the 99. So a lot of times there's an individual that just simply wants to be heard, and that's the only difference in their lives. And when they're heard, it allows them to feel like the journey is valid that they're on.
Yes.
And the questions they have are valid, as opposed to just shutting the person down. Is that true? Like, from your experience, is that true very much?
Absolutely. And I mean, psychology talks about this as well,
Yeah.
which is amazing. I feel like when psychology tells us stuff, it just makes it feels like it's more real in a sense of, okay, now they've studied this and they understand. Uh, Actually, I heard, so there's a lot of talk about holding space, and that's what I talk about. I have people can book an hour with me and I hold space for them. And there was, I don't know exactly who it was that said that, but anyway, they've done studies on this that if somebody is having an experience and they just get to vent about it or just get it out, talk it out, it doesn't stay with them. There's like the trauma doesn't stay with them like if they had to stuff it down or just like, no, nothing happened to you or just don't
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And I've actually noticed this myself. I'm somebody who likes to talk things out. So I will have people that I just can share things with. And I'm like, okay, I feel better, thank you. And I'm figuring it out myself. However, when I have people and I've started realizing who I really can share with and who I can't, they'll just, well, Stephanie, you need to think positive. Well, Stephanie, you need to do this and blah, blah, blah. I get more upset
Yeah.
and more
Yeah.
defensive and like, and I'd start getting very, okay, and I would always turn it back on, I'm doing something wrong. And now I've realized, no, those are just people who don't know how to hold space. They're reiterating what they've heard.
Yeah.
And you come away feeling worse. And also, there was something that you said to me once, because I was sharing with you things that I've been learning with different language. I've had to learn it outside the church. And I said to you, oh, I think I'm connecting the dots with certain things we were taught. And now I get it. And you said to me you had to hear it in a different language. But I also told you people would talk down to me, Stephanie, you can't do this, you can't do that. And you said they're talking to you like you're stupid. And that for the first time really hit because I thought I have to listen to everyone else. And that's where like I'm now I just did a podcast coming out and it's on authoritarianism and listening, like knowing who you are. It's not about other people. Anyways, but when people start telling me what to do, that's still a trigger
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm like, I already know. Yes, I know positivity. Yes, and I'm getting there, but I just need like 10 minutes just to be in a bad, pissy mood.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
and and I I am okay. I know the tools. I'm able to get out of this. So holding space is important.
Yeah. Holy space is important. I've been intrigued of late about thin spaces. You
Oh, what's
know,
that?
thin spaces is a spiritual experience where heaven and earth seem to merge at the same time, or there's very thin spaces between, the eternal and the earthly. I think it's an Irish or I think it's an Irish spirituality term of those moments, those experiences that we have when heaven just feels like it's invading our experience and our personal space. And it's a little different than holy space. But I think there's times that in the way we posture ourselves to another person, can become that thin space. In evangelical, well, I'm using that trigger word, but there, there are times when we can be the hands and feet of Jesus to somebody else. And I think those are the moments that we create thin spaces and we allow people to experience the person of Christ through us in ways that, Jesus was really harsh to the religious leaders. And I don't think that gets communicated enough. Look, why is it that Jesus was so disturbed at the way the religious leaders, not only the way they talked to him, but the way they talked to the common person? Why is it that Jesus, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which really had some incredibly tough things in it, why were they amazed that he spoke in a way that wasn't like the religious leaders? And they heard him, I think there's a lot of embedded wisdom in some of those, in a lot of those passages that we can embrace. As a pastor, I get asked the question, why, all the time. Why did this happen? Why did God take this person and all that stuff? And I've come to realize that why is the impossible question when it comes to life. Um, I can give you the why for why I'm doing this business model, or the why for, why the church is going in this direction and stuff like that. But when it comes to the really hard questions in life, why is almost non-existent. I can't tell you why this happened. Why did this tragedy happen at this time? Why did God spare this person as opposed to, half the people in the very same, bus, not, all of those are really life altering questions. But the fact of the matter, there's such a mystery to it. And it's getting back to what you said earlier. A lot of times people just need to vent, just need to be heard. You can give them the theological framework and say, God works in mysterious ways. Things in life just don't happen. Life's not fair. We've heard all those adages. Yet when it happens to you and it's personal, you just have to let it out and just feel that you're not alone in, the space that you find yourself. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And it
Yeah.
actually makes me so there when I go to the swimming pool, and of course I chat. And there's one guy there, and he's an atheist, and we talk politics and religion, and it's really fun. But he'll go, well, I don't understand, like, how do they explain this? And I start going, well, they try to do that. And he goes, I'm not really asking, it's rhetorical.
Oh,
And that's where I realized we were always trying to justify our answers. And, I
yeah.
studied apologetics, and it was always given a reason for the faith that you have. And it was all about having answers. When they talked about doing it in a humble way, which was good. Uh, but that really didn't help me. I mean, I guess in some way it was good with the time it was, but now I realize, why do I have to have an answer? And I have people who come from different backgrounds, and I mean, we all do, right? Everyone's different. Uh, but people who are not religious at all. And they'll share with me. I have a friend who's like, people say, oh, everything happens for a reason. Rawr. I don't like that because she's gone through a lot. And I just started listening to her, and I was like, you're right. It's not a helpful saying, especially when you're going through something and somebody hasn't. So, and I think it's a lot more than just it happens for a reason. I think it's just a saying that we say. I do believe things happen. I think it's a lot more complicated or nuanced, or it's not so simple. And so when I heard her explanation, I was like, I don't have to say anything. It's freeing too, because then you don't have to start justifying and get defensive or anything.
Um, yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I think you've heard me say it, that you can never get past somebody's ears. If you want to get to somebody's heart, you got to get past their ears first. And if they're going to shut you down, just because you're giving pat answers or something, I think I think most people have a good BS meter when it comes to, some of life's big questions. But I know as I've gotten older, I'm more not the pat answers, but let me tell you a story.
Yes. Isn't it
Yeah,
wonderful?
yeah. I've told people a number of times. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, like I was born in Athens, and my family came to Canada really young. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my family went back, and we spent a good part of the year in Athens. And I remember my grandmother at the time was a caretaker of the church, and my mom was out, and because my dad stayed in Canada, but my mom was out, and my grandmother suddenly said, "I have to go to the church, so I have to take you and your brother to come with me." So we didn't know that something had come up, and she had to go to the church. So she took my brother and I up in the balcony of this church, and it turned out to be a funeral. And I remember my brother's a year and a half younger than I am, and we're up in this balcony. And I don't know if you've ever been to a Greek Orthodox Mediterranean funeral, but
No.
it was dark. There was incense, wailing and crying. And it was the very first funeral that my brother and I had ever been to. And the person in the coffin was our age.
Oh, wow.
And to this day, my brother and I argue whether it was a boy or a girl. Okay. But we found out later, and I remember the father at the head of, like, he was inconsolable. He was screaming and crying and rocking, and it was just so horrendous an experience. And I remember finding out afterwards that the father was working on the roof of the house and had a scaffold with all these bricks on it, and the, the thing collapsed when the child was underneath it and crushed them. Okay. Now, the reason I tell that story is like from a very young age, I got to a place in my own life where I said, there's a young life that was taken, my age. And, I started to think this life is not all there is. Like, to me, life, if we just live and then we're nothing again, this whole existence doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest. I'm sorry. Like, whether you live to 80 to 100 to 5 years, like, life doesn't make sense if there's nothing after it. And, I've used that question many, many times with people, right? Does it make sense? And that sort of got me on a journey, like I said, from a very young age to think about God. And, I did the whole apologetics thing. I read all the different religions and all the different spiritual books. And I couldn't get around Christianity. I really couldn't. Christianity in my experience of life is the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that comes close to explaining evil, comes close to explaining good, comes close to explaining, eternity in really profound terms, the character of God, all of that kind of stuff. And I know other people have, but every other faith just seems to center on existence in this life alone. It doesn't expand dimensionally, in every way, shape, or form, right? Where everything else seems to be limited to this experience, where Christianity seemed to be so much more expansive. And that's where I ended up. But that had a profound experience on me, in that trip. I had three experiences during that trip that just shaped my life for the remainder of my life. The Greek priest used to visit us on a regular basis, and he used to love chasing us with a stick, and this guy in black robes, long gray beard, and a black hat. He's got this switch, and it's like, why you at? He goes, oh, because you're bad boys from Canada, and we need to get you whatever. But I never heard the love of God. I never heard the sacrificial nature of Jesus for me or anything. It was just very dark, depressing. That shaped my sort of perception of life and people, and my understanding of the Bible.
Hmm. There's something you said, well, there's two things you said, and I wrote it down. First of all, you said, does that make sense? And I used to do that a lot when I actually didn't know if I was making sense to people. But I find it actually helps to help if somebody doesn't understand how, if they're perceiving it differently or they don't get what you're saying. If you ask, does that make sense? And they're like, not really. Okay, I can reframe it and let's work on how we can get this across.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think I know that's very powerful because how many times do we not get something and then people are mocking us, shaming us, talking like you're stupid? I used to get that all the time. I'm like, my brain is different. Maybe if you just word it a little bit differently, I might understand it. If you have a little bit more patience.
yeah,
And now I say that. I say that to people. Does that make sense? And not in a way that I don't think I'm being clear, but in a way for, are we on the same page?
yeah, yeah,
And also you said sharing stories. And that's, I know so many people who do this, and this is why I like to share stories instead of I thought I wanted to be a motivational speaker and do all that, but I'm like, no, I just share stories and I relate it to life and people connect with that. And then I realized, oh, that's what Jesus was doing the whole time. Because as a kid, we're learning about parables.
yeah,
Okay, blah, blah, blah. But now I get it. He was sharing because people are listening to stories.
yeah. And he asked more questions than he answered. Like those two dynamics, he asked more questions and allowed people to process and shared stories about here's what the kingdom of God is like. So I think I think I had such a reaction to church and the way it was presented. I went the absolute opposite. It's like, and I remember when I first started reading the Bible and started looking at the life of Jesus, I was a little bit like Philip Yancey, The Jesus I Never Knew. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
I have it, but I have not read it.
Oh,
Like
okay.
most of my
Because
books.
and I remember reading that book and going, yes, that's exactly why isn't this the Jesus that I'm getting at church? Why isn't this the Jesus that I'm hearing about? If Christianity is rooted in the person, work, and life of Jesus, why aren't we getting this? Anyway, that's kind of
That's a
my
whole other topic.
oh yeah, that's kind of my life experience. And I just yeah, um, I just feel this whole faith thing is so important that we have to do everything we can to model it in a way that makes it contagious. And you can be contagious in two different ways, right? You can be a contagious like a disease and nobody wants you, or you can be contagious in a way that everybody wants to be there, wants to hear it, wants to be a part of it, right? And sometimes we get the wrong contagion going forward.
Yeah. And that's where I, when I started learning about the different laws of the universe, law of attraction, I was told that was evil. I cannot learn that. But all these rules made up. Oh, that's what I came from, right? But it makes so much sense because I think, well, but if you're an angry person who likes to complain, people who don't enjoy that, who find that off-putting, are not going to want to be around you. They're attracted to more positive people who find joy in life. So once again, on this healing journey, when you are light to light, a light in the darkness, people are attracted to that. That is the
Yeah,
law of attraction. That's just, it makes sense, right? And so I started noticing that as I started healing and coming out of a lot more angry spaces, I was finding friends who were also um, less angry. And, you start
yeah.
coming through this and you're like, oh, wow, there's so many cool people out here. Whereas I was stuck before, right?
Yeah, 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 and that's and we talk about deconstruction and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's a positive side to deconstruction,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
If you're legalistic or very judgmental, and that's what you base your faith on, and you're looking at the world in a very negative light all the time, if you deconstruct and see it from Jesus' viewpoint, from a compassionate standpoint, that changes your whole perspective. You know,
Actually, that's another aspect of listening to people. And this is what I've noticed. In the church spaces where they talk negatively about deconstructing, they just see people as, oh, you just want to sin more. Oh, you're just angry and hateful. But what they don't understand is that, first of all, this is a grieving process.
yeah,
Anger is a part of it. I
yeah,
did not I wrote an article about this, um and this is where you held space for me, because as I was starting to learn about really what I was raised in, really what else was out there, or where's the love, because I did not experience much love. I was made fun of for asking, why can't we just love people? And I just saw anger and hatred and othering, dehumanizing. That's my Christianity I grew up with.
yeah, yeah.
And it's not good. It's disgusting. That shouldn't be. That's religion. And so I was angry because I was like, wait, I was raised in this. I had anxiety, depression. I wasn't able to do this or grow or learn about anything outside of this. I mean, I could, but it was always like, be careful, Stephanie. Of course you're going to be angry because my whole life was this. And this is where I wish people, like, can we help people come together to understand? This is where, if you really want to be a Christian who who cares, then listen to people, even in their anger, especially in their anger.
Especially in their anger. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're hurting, and you were one of the only people, and I'm getting teary talking about it, but you were one of the only people who just did that,
Yeah.
because everyone else talked down to me and told me I was being sinful. But I was coming through, and I'm like, as I'm healing, I'm doing better. Did you want me to stay in anxiety and depression and hate and all of that? No, but you don't even know me and you're not asking questions.
Yeah.
So, um, that was important. And anyways, I just think, once again, like, are we judging where somebody's at? And then deconstruction, people are like, well, that's a bad term, and all these, oh, they're speaking against it, and they're so nasty. And I get it, what they're seeing on the other side, people are nasty too. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they're just switching viewpoints, but deep down there's a dehumanizing of others, there's an anger, a fear, whatever is all in there. But we're all human, and so we're all experiencing that. But just you're using God to justify it, and they're maybe angry at God or whatever. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to say. That's got so many, perfect storms aligning itself. Everything from fear to, and let's be honest. Christianity is rooted in grace and love. Those are not easy emotions for the average person. We're fearful of commitment. We're afraid to put ourselves and be vulnerable, all those kinds of things, right? Um, and love will demand of us more than we're willing to give sometimes, right? But I think one of the most loving things we can do personally is listen. And what's taken away when you just listen? You know what I mean? Like why does your judgment or your trying to fix it take precedent over just listening? What does it cost you to listen? That's that's probably where I ended up in my life. It's like, what does it cost me just to listen? And why do I have to tell, show, you know, rebuke? That's a beautiful word, eh? Um,
Oh.
like, what does it cost you to listen to someone? And often it doesn't. In fact, you gain more by listening than by judging, directing, rebuking, all of that kind of stuff. The greater threat to the relationship is always in the response, rarely in the listening.
Yeah. It's well, and Richard Rohr, but for anyone who doesn't, he's a Franciscan priest and writer. And I read one of his books, The Art of Letting Go, The
Yeah,
Life of St. Francis of Assisi.
yeah,
And in it, he was talking about every day I pray, um, I don't need to be right. I don't need to win. It's not about me. And that is where, when we don't want to listen, when we want to get our point across, it's about me. It's about my ego coming up. And that was so impactful. I wrote that down and I think of that every time.
oh yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't always practice it, of course, because we're human, but I remember it's not about me stuff.
yeah.
And what is it within me that wants to have something else, have something over somebody else? What's that wound within me that's going on? Like you're not feeling heard, or you're not feeling, you want to be more right. I like to be right, especially with my dad. I like to get something over on him. That's a big, deep wound there. So, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, I'm surprised how many people want to tell me about their lives on a Sunday morning. And I'm getting ready to speak. You know, worship has started, and I've had to stop people, and I say, you know, this deserves a better ear than I'm giving you right now. Can we grab a coffee this week and we can talk about this? Because Sunday morning's not good for me to be all in, you know, but unfortunately, I've had to do that because I've recognized that this is so important to them that I could easily brush it off because of the urgency of where I find myself, right? So I've had to say to people, yeah, let's get together face to face because this deserves a hearing that you're not getting right now from me.
Oh, that's beautiful. And like, how did was it just trial and error of saying things? Because, sometimes you want to be like, ugh, not right now. And that could be the reason somebody doesn't come back to church.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely is trial and error, and definitely moments where I didn't handle the situation really well. Um, you know, um, I've been, I don't know, and again, I've said this already. I don't know if it's the age I'm at, but I've reflected a lot on what experiences I've had in my own life. And I just felt God shaping me in a way that, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this for His honor and glory, not mine. You know, I've said to people, am I building a monument to myself or an altar to God? Right? And if you're building an altar to God, then you're, you know, in the past, I've said things and done things that immediately the church gets judged for. And that's been hurtful. That's been really hurtful. And and I've been recipient of incredible hurt and incredible comments about me from people that don't even know me. And I guess I just don't. I want to minimize that in my own life as much as possible.
That's got to be a lot, like a lot of pressure, obviously, because not only are you, but you're the role of a pastor and the head of the church. And so, like, I can't even imagine how that, although that must have been more like that's always, is that always weighing on you? Or,
Um, I don't think it always weighs on me. I think I've gotten to a point in my life that I'm naturally inclined to lean into people, especially when I get certain cues about what they want to talk about and things like that. I think I've just aged into the role graciously, hopefully graciously, that my ears perk up when certain contexts show up. And and again, I've been deeply wounded by the church myself, and so you're deeply wounded by the church, and at the same time you believe in it so strongly, and that's a real tension, right? And the only part of that that I can alleviate is my role in it. If I can stand and say, well, I did the best that I could in the situation and the circumstances. Was that passage in Romans? Do your best to get along with everyone as long as you are able, or as long as it's possible for you, right? I just think that's the way I'm trying to live my life. If that at this point, I just
mm,
don't want to be the. I often wonder how many people are going to a Christless eternity more because of the church than for any other reason. That breaks my heart.
hello, my lovelies. It's Steph here for a quick break. If you're enjoying the Steph Up podcast and you want to support the show, you can buy me a coffee. Just check the link in the show notes or the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code that's literally on your screen right now. Thank you so much. Sending love to you all, and back to the show. Yeah. I feel like probably you have a certain energy where people feel safe with you.
Mm.
Have you, even if you're like just out somewhere, do people come up to you and just kind of start sharing?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have been told that. I have been told that I'm relative, relatively safe person. I'm not judgmental. I have a lot of non-believing friends. I still have, because I came out of the business world into ministry. Like I said, the last thing I wanted to do was go into ministry. If you had told me 30 years ago I'd be in this still 30 years, I would have scheduled a brain scan for you. There's just no way. So I still have a lot of non-believing friends, and I used to have an atheist study group where atheist and we would talk about life stuff. So I've not been fully submerged in the Christian world and not had contacts with people outside. And because I came to be a believer kind of in late 20s and was in business school and all that kind of stuff. And I was a musician and traveled around as a musician too in those early years. So I've had these life experiences that allow me to kind of engage with non-believers in a way that isn't necessarily churchy.
Which is very powerful. And I heard it was Rob Bell, who was a pastor at one point, and he said, stop talking so much about even about Jesus. Like people know who he is. Just live it. And
Yeah.
not I feel like in especially North American Christianity, evangelicalism, at least, because that's my experience. There's just too much talking, and people don't actually understand and embody it. I said a lot of stuff. We were saying, oh, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. I was saying that 20, 30 years ago. I didn't know what I was talking about,
Oh yeah.
and so like people are like, they were probably like, okay, but she acts like this. And so, anyways, um, it's more about the healing aspect than anything. But yeah, but and also having the grace, you know, I look back and I'm like, oh, I said those things. Having the grace for myself, but having the grace for other people and just recognizing they are where they are. And I can't force them to understand or to be anywhere else because that's their journey. And that helped me a lot just in listening to people as well. And a huge part of how I was raised and basically a lot of the church is talking to people and just telling everyone you need to be saved. I'm like, that then I see that attitude, that ego that comes out and that forcing. And I was like, no, it's not about forcing. You're pissing everyone off. Go stop it. Um, you know, it's about allowing people to be as they are. And if you are a magnetic person, if that is through Jesus, then people are going to notice eventually. So I think that's where just, if we're human, let's be human. Don't be like, I have to be Christiany over here, or I have to be over here. I have to
Oh
tell
yeah.
you what to do. We're all human and we all experience all these emotions and all this stuff. And even if you haven't been through something, um, I can't I can't understand what you're going through right now, but I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And but I mean, not everyone is at this place where they can do this either. So it's not easy. Um, but like, do you have any, if somebody wants to learn, how can we practice listening without trying to fix or advise or change somebody? Do you have any suggestions on how people can start by doing that?
Oh wow.
Oh, sorry.
That's a tough question because I think it's a matter of really looking inside yourself, and what do I want out of what do I want out of this conversation? What do I want out of this relationship? I think you have to ask yourself, do I care enough about people to even want to listen? I have friends that couldn't care less about listening to other people. They have their friends, they have, their situation. In fact, I have a few friends that say, how do you do what you do? Because it would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, how do you wipe your mind of all the things that are going through it at the time that somebody wants to engage you in a conversation?
And have the patience and the emotional regulation
Yeah.
to not snap back because I have to be careful of that if somebody and I'm just like I'm stressed and I'm like okay, if I lash out, so
Okay.
it's like taking that deep breath and going,
One question I ask myself, what's preventing me from hearing this person fully? A lot of times it's there isn't the space to do it because I'm restricted by time, or there's something in my own mind that is consuming me right at the moment. And I have found if I express those things, that goes a long way. I'm not I don't know if anybody can do that, but as I said earlier, there's times, during this, Sunday morning that I've had to say to people, my head's not here, right? I actually had a congregant yesterday tell me to calm down and you need to go relax. And when was the last time somebody ever said that to you and you went and just relaxed? Like that just infuriated me, right? Because we were trying to fix something with a technology problem.
oh,
And the person said, you need to go relax, you need to calm down. And it's like, I didn't even know that just irritated and aggravated me more, because we had a technology issue when we're working to solve it. And I love getting my hands dirty when I can and help to solve a problem, but that was just really offensive to me. You know,
Mm,
you know, they could have said they could have said it in so many different ways as opposed to the way they said it to me, because I found it incredibly disrespectful. You know,
yeah.
um, I yeah,
Although, just to play devil's advocate, for somebody from their perspective, that could be like for I am sure yeah, it's
yeah,
not easy with these things, but it's like I'm trying to help.
yeah,
But then when you're trying to help and it's not helpful to the other person, oh my God, it's like all these different things, right? It's
yeah,
and
yeah.
how we perceive things and how, yeah, what triggers us. Like, man, it's complicated being human.
Oh, it is very complicated. Well, I had to go. I went in my office and I just, I had the conversation with myself. I said, I know the person. There was no ill intent, and
Giving each other grace, right? This is
yeah, yeah,
that.
giving each other grace. I have a number of seniors who, in a week, will tell me the same story three times over and forget totally that they told me the story.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if it's just being a pastor, but sometimes you have to exercise more patience than you're sometimes willing. But I think it starts with you on how much am I willing to listen to another person, and you have to make that mental shift. Um, and if it's not working for you, I think you have to be honest with the person. This is not getting the attention it deserves, and how can I hear you better?
yeah. And like you said, like the when I asked you, how did you was it practicing learning what to say? Because that's so wonderful that you're at that place where you can say, can we have coffee this week? Whereas, I mean, if I was about to speak, and so I need to be left alone. I'm like kind of nervous, just okay, I'm focused. Don't come up and start talking to me. Um, and when you're in that moment, you could be like, ugh, not now.
Yeah,
Uh, and
yeah,
so you've had lots of practice with that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Have
it's also like you're listening to the other people. You're like, I want you to be heard. I want to give you that time and attention. And
yeah,
that's so beautiful.
yeah. It is. I think this whole art of listening is probably one of the most powerful relational tools that we have, and yet it's probably one of the most neglected relational tools that we have. And everybody wants to be heard in some way or another.
Yep.
Not want to be fixed, not want to be corrected, not want to be rebuked, but just want to be heard. So they feel that they're not alone and they're not some kind of alien because of the way they feel.
And I think in a way to sum that up is a lot of times we feel like we're a project.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And hearing somebody um, takes that project, category away, I think.
Yeah. And also it makes you feel like you're not um you can't do things on your own, like I was saying earlier. Where, if I'm just sharing something with a friend and they're telling me, well, you need to do this. I'm like, yes, I know the tools. Thank you very much. Do you believe, like, that I'm mentoring? I know the coachy stuff, right? Like, and I'm not asking you, like, I mean, that's also where understanding, like, what people are saying, and not everyone has that awareness. I get it. But it's just like, sometimes I'm like, I'm just sharing. Can you just not try to fix me at this moment? Because I
Yeah.
do feel like a project.
Yeah.
And so that's also when listening to what is something that I don't enjoy, what is something that I find off-putting. Oh, yeah, I'm not able to just be heard, or I'm not, people don't want to understand. They're just taking what they think I said and going with it. And I'm just like, wait, what's happening here? And then, right? And I'm like, well, if you had like maybe listened or been able to ask me more questions, we wouldn't
Yeah.
be in this kind of argument.
Or sometimes silence is the best advice you can give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this was wonderful chatting with you, Jon.
Right.
If people want to if anyone wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best place to reach you?
Well, I'm lead pastor of Village Green Community Church in London. They can check the website out at villagegreenchurch.com. You can email me at leadpastor at villagegreenchurch.com. That's leadpastor at villagegreenchurch.com. That's all lowercase letters. I'd love to hear from you. Love to, connect in some kind of way. If you have questions about God or anything about a relationship, yeah, I would love to hear from you. This
And
has really been wonderful, Stephanie. Absolutely.
it's always enjoyable chatting with you. And I'll
Yeah.
put up that information in the show notes. Is there any words of parting wisdom you would love to share or
Well,
anything you want to add?
I think this has been an important conversation because I think there's a lot of hurt in the world right now. I think there's a lot of doubt. We're seeing a crisis of greed, and I'm not just talking money. I'm talking about power, authority. There's a crisis of character right now. It seems like we're being run by 3-year-olds in older bodies. I know that sounds very negative. We're having a crisis of accountability. There's just so many social and cultural crises that are happening right now. And I think people are just feeling really disoriented. And I think we have to learn to embrace that we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be heard. God wants to hear from us. If God wants to hear from us, why wouldn't another person who wants to have a relationship want to hear from us? So I think to heal the kind of human spirit, we have to get back to some of these things that have been part of human dignity and integrity for a long, long time, and just embrace the people that we care about, and even further than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I completely get it. But the hope, and this is where I know a lot of people feel hopeless right now, but I'm like, the hope is in people doing the work, is in these conversations. And
Yeah.
I see a resurgence of that. I see a lot more people talking about compassion, empathy, kindness,
Oh
and
yeah.
and love wins over all. And so we're doing the work and we have to stay, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So anyways, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You too, Stephanie. Take care, and all the best.
Sending love to you all. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.